and the kinds of behaviors where it looks, if we were to look at ourselves through the lens of an experiment like we would an animal experiment, we think that animal is sick. If you saw an animal digging in the corner, looking for a bone, the dog is looking,
That's
looking,
so
looking, looking,
true.
looking, looking, you'd think that's really sad. That's us.
What's happening, people? If you enjoyed
Man, that was a short clip, but that shit opened my eyes so much to, I mean, really everything he was saying. Like, yeah, if the way you be refreshing your feed, that's some like crackhead tendencies, you know, you just constantly trying to find something. It's
triggering are our phones when it comes to dopamine?
Okay, great question. We often hear that, that social media is getting dopamine hit after dopamine hit. When we first get on social media for the first time or after a long period of time, the amount of dopamine that's released we think is quite substantial. It's novel. Remember, dopamine is about novelty, surprise, and the sense that we are on some exciting track. That's what dopamine is really about.
so crazy.
It puts us into states of readiness, anticipation, looking, seeking, etc., almost always for things outside the confines of our skin. Just to contrast it maybe for a bit more of a future discussion, serotonin does the opposite. When there's a lot of serotonin in our brain and body, typically it makes us feel satisfied, sated, and more quiescent, comfortable with what we have in our own immediate sphere and within us, right? The comfort of a good meal, the food you have. Dopamine is about go, go, go. If you look at somebody who's high on cocaine or methamphetamine, it's all about pursuit, because that's a very dopaminergic drug. You look at somebody who's taken a drug, and I'm not suggesting people do this, but it really ramps up serotonin. Let's say a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, Prozac, Zoloft, etc. The side effects of those drugs, if the dosages are too high, lack of appetite, lack of libido, kind of meh about life, then so they'll adjust the dose down. That's because those are serotonergic drugs. So in general, when we are in pursuit of things, dopamine is quite high. So now you have to remind me your question, because I've set up the dopamine serotonin parallel.
Smartphones.
Cell phones, yes. Forgive me. So the thing about cell phones is when you first get on there and you haven't, let's say no Wi-Fi on the flight or something, and you land, it can actually be quite stimulating. You get a lot of dopamine. Oh, there's this. Oh, there's that. But very quickly, when you're scrolling on social media, you're no longer getting the novelty, but you're continuing to do it, and you almost don't know why you're doing it. At that point, it shifts over to something that's a bit more like an obsessive-compulsive behavior, where we can define an obsessive-compulsive behavior where the obsession leads to a compulsion. So the obsession is a thought, the compulsion is a behavior, but the acting out of the compulsion merely serves to increase the obsession. Right? This is very different than being obsessed with food or obsessed with cleanliness.
There's no payoff.
Right, exactly. There's no anxiety relief by carrying out the compulsion. With OCD behaviors, like scrolling social media, the dopamine quickly wanes, and then you find that you're just and we've all been there, you're scrolling, you're like, why am I doing this? This isn't that interesting. This isn't that interesting.
That makes so much sense if you think about it. Like, that was like always, I remember that memes and stuff that went around whenever like social media and shit first popped off, like in 2010. Whenever, or at least that I remember. Whenever there was always like the joke about how the little red notification of the numbers above your app had to be gone on everyone's phone. That has to be like some OCD that everyone had, is that you just can't deal with having a notification. You have to fucking make sure that every notification is cleared. You got to make sure your screen's done, and every single thing that you went through, and you didn't miss anything. That's crazy to think about. I never really did connect the two, but thinking about it now, it makes so much sense.
Now, the algorithms for social media are very clever, and I don't want to demonize it. I, provide a lot of my life is spent on, on social media now. But
Right.
in the algorithms that they've incorporated function on the most powerful way to keep people doing a behavior, or an animal for that matter, is intermittent random reward, or random intermittent reward, that you don't know when you're going to hit the jackpot. So you're scrolling, and then you see something. Typically, it's very high, what, in nerd speak, we'd say signal to noise. So if you're reading some interesting things, this came out in the news, this came out, and then it's all of a sudden a riot, or a person that is base jumping off a building, or, for people that are scrolling, looking at bodies or something like that, live bodies. Hopefully people aren't looking at dead bodies. But look, if something's very tragic.
Yeah, bro, the people that do that shit's so weird to me. The people that are fine with watching someone get murdered or killed or anything. If you like, it's so it makes me feel terrible inside if I ever see that shit. I see like if I see like a caption on the shit talking about how someone so died or this and that, I want to watch it, but I just cannot bring myself to actually viewing the murder or whatever the fuck happens. Like that shit's just I feel it. I don't see how people don't feel the sorrow and the guilt. Like it's a person you're watching. It's not no cartoon or anything. It's literally a person you're watching die. It's so weird that people are okay with that shit nowadays. I mean, I get it. Like I feel like we should be more used to it since evolutionarily we've seen people get murdered since the beginning of time. We just always been, at least men, we've always been warriors. So I guess not everyone, but most. Maybe that's my problem. I don't got a warrior spirit, but that shit just is so weird to me, man. It's just like you have to be so fucking. I can't think of the word, like sociopathic or one of the, where you just don't feel sorrow for someone.
Then that has this gravitational pull, and then what happens is you start getting the system working for that next dopamine hit that you don't know when it's going to come. It's just like gambling. So I look at social media as initially being very dopaminergic, driving reward, surprise, and excitement, but very quickly transitioning to something more like OCD and the kinds of behaviors where it looks, if we were to look at ourselves through the lens of an experiment like we would an animal experiment, we think that animal is sick. If you saw an animal digging in the corner, looking for a bone, the dog is looking, you'd think that's really sad. That's us.
What's happening, people? If you enjoyed
it, that was a short clip, but that shit opened my eyes so much to, I mean, really everything he was saying. Like, yeah, if the way you be refreshing your feed, that's some like crackhead tendencies, you know, you just constantly trying to find something. It's, man, I hope whenever I say this, I mean it, that I'm gonna tune it back a little bit whenever I catch myself doing that. But I feel like it's just so natural for us nowadays that we just do it without even knowing. We just like we're on autopilot. Like, you know how whenever you be driving a car sometimes and you think back and like, man, what the fuck was I even thinking about for the past 10 minutes? Like, how the fuck was I driving perfectly fine? I feel like that's the same way that we do with our phone. We're just keep refreshing. Oh, I'm gonna get off the app. Clicks right back on the fucking same app. Does it again. Finally gets the fuck off the app. Then goes to a different app. Does it again. Then goes back to the app. Like it's just a constant fucking need. It definitely is some crackhead tendencies. But if you like that type of video, I know it's a little bit different from what I usually react to. I saw it and I thought it looked a little interesting. I hope you all did too. If you liked it, give me a like. If you have any suggestions or comments on the video, comment down below. I reply to every single one of them. Or if not, I'll like it to show y'all that I read it. And with that being said, give me a subscribe. Deuces.
Yeah, and I'm gonna grind until we on. See all this pain, I let it live through all my songs. Was in that jam, ain't never been, ain't never fold. I caught that case, I did my time, I never told.